the Holy Quran, verses 19 to 20, it says, He has let loose the two seas, converging together with a barrier between them, they do not break through. So, it is astonishing that something like water, which mixes in a glass with other mixed liquids, becomes 50% of one thing and 50% of the other, typically. Unless you mix oil and water. What happens?
They don't mix.
The oil goes to the top.
Disaster.
It's a disaster, right? But most things, if you mix it, it becomes joined. But this miracle that was mentioned in the Holy Quran here, you can see it, and we're going to talk about all the different places, and I'm even going to show you some pictures. But it is amazing that most things, when you mix them in a beaker or a glass, they completely mix. But it does not mix with the two adjacent seas. Seas differ in their salinity, density, temperature, and other properties. When photographs are taken of the seas by satellite, detecting different thermal conditions or characteristics, they show up in different colors. In Surah An-Naml, the ant, Surah 27, verse 61, is not Allah who has made the earth as a fixed abode, has placed rivers in its midst, has placed from mountains for it, and has set a barrier between the two seas. Is there anyone worthy of worship besides Allah? No. Very good. This is a barrier by Allah's will. One does not change the other. Each is pushing against the other, but they do not get mixed. This is also the case where vast lands separate rivers from the seas. There is no mixing of their waters. Rather, each of them has its own course and distinction. Now, there's another verse in the Quran that I did not put in these slides that talks about you can't mix salt water and fresh water together. So we know that when you look at estuaries and places where these bodies of water come together, they actually don't mix. So Deborah is saying they just saw this in Brazil. So what two bodies of water is that?
The river, a wide river, which the open ocean, you can see the division of Congo, and we cross by boat.
Everybody hear that? There's a river in Brazil that runs into the ocean. And you can see the barrier, the wall that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put there where this river water does not mix with the salt water. Anytime else that if you go to your home and you mix some salt water over here and take some fresh water and you pour it in a beaker together, what's going to happen?
Less salty.
You're going to have salt water, but it's going to be less salty. But by Allah, this doesn't happen. This phenomenon occurs in several places, including the divider between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean at Gibraltar. A white bar also can be clearly seen at Cape Point, Cape Peninsula, South Africa, where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Indian Ocean. This phenomenon occurs in several places, including Egypt, where the Nile River flows into the Mediterranean Sea. And these are some sources, scientific sources that I put on the board here that say what I've said. So if you wanted to check those out, you can check those out. But what I wanted to do in this class is show you from the Quran and then show you some sources. And what's very interesting is that these sources only discovered this very, very recently. In the strait between Denmark and Sweden, where the rough waters of the North Sea meet the calmer waters of the Baltic Sea, they do not mix together. They cannot breach their respective limits. This has only recently been discovered by oceanographers. Because of the physical force called surface tension, the waters of the neighboring seas do not mix. Now, what I'd like you to do is, if you know something about what I'm talking about, particularly if you are a science teacher, a school teacher, and there's something about what I'm saying that you teach, or what grade this is addressed, I'd really like you to raise your hand and build upon what we're talking about here. Because it's really, really amazing stuff. I get so pumped up about this stuff. It really gets me going. And so what has happened is that I thought I would finish the miracles of the Quran, and I keep finding more. And so this class just keeps growing and growing and growing. Yes, brother?
Didn't we mention something about like the fish, how they don't mix, or how there was like an in-between where there was the salt and the fresh water?
Yes, I said that earlier. It does say that. It talks about the salt and fresh water, yes. Absolutely. So, caused by the difference of the density of their water, surface tension prevents them from mingling with one another, just as a thin wall were between them. And here's the source of that last statement. During a period when people had no knowledge of physics, surface tension, or oceanography, this was revealed in the Holy Quran. Subhanallah.
100% do.
And here's a picture, and I wish you could see this picture better, but this is a picture of exactly what I'm talking about, and I've seen this with my own eyes. It's quite amazing. Now, what's also amazing is that if you go here, if you step in the Indian Ocean versus the Atlantic Ocean, there's about 13 degrees difference in the water. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever put my feet in the water in South Africa, I had to run out because it literally hurt my bones. I had never been in water that cold. And then later on, I used to swim in it every day. But I had to acclimate to the water that was so cold. And literally, it's just a matter of feet that you step in and there's 13 degrees difference in the water. That's from Allah. And Surah Nur, light, 24:40, or the unbeliever's state is like the darkness of the fathomless deep sea. It is covered by waves above which are clouds, layers of darkness, one upon or above the other. If a man puts out his hand, he can scarcely see it, though Allah gives no light to those who have no light. Now, anybody in here ever did diving besides me?
Driving?
Diving.
Like what kind of diving? I mean,
Scuba diving.
okay, yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But if you go into water deep enough and you put your hand in front of you, you cannot see your hand. Now, this would not have been known 1,400 years ago. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it in the Holy Quran. This darkness is found in deep seas and oceans around a depth of 218.7 yards and below. At this depth, there is almost no light. Below a depth of 1,093.6 yards, there is no light at all. And here's the, if you notice, the reference I used was published in 1991. And here's a picture of that. Hopefully I'm going to get better one day at pictures. But basically what this is showing is that below here, basically, this is the prism of light. There's no light. And that's 150 meters and deeper. Amazing, right? Between 3 and 30% of the sunlight is reflected at the sea surface. Then almost all of the 7 colors of the light spectrum are absorbed one after another in the first 218 yards, except the blue light. And this is the reference that I got this from.
Rainbow?
Today, the use of submarines and special equipment has enabled scientists to know about the sea's structure, the characteristics of things living in it, its salinity, the amount of water it contains, its surface area and depth. Human beings are not able to dive more than about 43.74 yards without the aid of submarines or special equipment. What will happen? The pressure would crush you. Humans cannot survive in the deep, dark parts of the ocean at depths of more than 218 yards. It is a miracle that the darkness of the sea was described in the Quran 1400 years ago, when there was no equipment to enable man to dive into the depths of the ocean. Scientists have only recently discovered this phenomenon. The statement in verse 40 of Surah Nur, like the darkness of a fathomless sea, which is covered by waves, which are above waves, above which are clouds, draws our attention to another miracle in the Holy Quran. And this is a quote that I took. Scientists have recently discovered that there are internal waves which occur on density interfaces between layers of different densities. These internal waves cover the deep waters of seas and oceans because deep water has a higher density than the water above it. Internal waves act like surface waves. They can break just like surface waves. Internal waves cannot be seen by the human eye, but they can be detected by studying temperature or salinity changes at a given location. And if you'll notice that this came from a book called Oceanography, published in 1993. And here's a picture of that. When you see the surface waves that I was talking about, very deep in the deep dark seas. The previous picture represents internal waves that interface between two layers of water, different densities. The lower level is denser than the upper one. This scientific fact was declared in verse 40 of Surah Nur of the Quran 14 centuries ago, but discovered by scientists only very recently. The statement in the Quran runs absolutely parallel to the explanation in the picture and scientific findings. It is clear that the second set of waves are the surface waves that we see, because the verse mentions that above the second waves are clouds. Exactly. In Surah Nur, verse 43, have you not seen how God makes the clouds more gently, then joins them together, then makes them into a stack, and then you see the rain come out of it. So now we're moving into a new miracle, another miracle, about the cloud formation that was told about in the Holy Quran and only in recent times discovered and explained scientifically. Scientists have studied cloud types and have realized that rain clouds are formed and shaped according to definite systems and certain steps connected with certain types of wind and clouds. One type of rain cloud is the cumulonimbus cloud. Meteorologists have studied how these clouds are formed and how they produce rain, hail, and lightning. Scientists have found that cumulonimbus clouds go through the following steps to produce rain. Step 1. The clouds are pushed by the wind. Cumulonimbus clouds begin to form when wind pushes some small pieces of cloud, cumulus clouds, to an area where these clouds converge.
There was a documentary by by National Geographic, I think. Recently, there was a TV about how the clouds and the fires on the forest and the sea, how they contribute to produce oxygen. And I really recommend everybody to watch it because it's exactly what is in the Quran.
As a matter of fact, I'm using National Geographic as one of my sources here. And if we have time today, we'll actually get to where we talk about the miracle of wood that was also in the Quran and fire. And I won't break the secret early because I want you to see it from the Quran and how it evolves. It's actually so amazing. So this is step one. And here's a picture of it. And I couldn't get this picture much better, but what I'd like to point out to you is that these are arrows. These little lines here are arrows. And they're pushing the small clouds up. And what's happening?
Gathering.
They're gathering together and making what?
Bigger clouds.
Bigger clouds. Alhamdulillah.
Where did you say were arrows?
Yes.
These little lines right here are actually arrows. You can't tell it in here, but these were the arrows showing, these are arrows.
Oh, it's showing the direction of the wind.
Showing the way these winds bring the small clouds and make big clouds. The satellite photo shows the clouds moving towards the convergence areas B, C, and D. The arrows indicate the direction of the wind. So the second step, what did it say in the Quran? Joining. Then the small clouds join together, forming a larger cloud. And here's a picture of that. Another picture. The small clouds, the wind direction it's showing, then these clouds come together and they turn into a big cloud. So isolated, cumulus stage, and then the growing stage. And then notice these arrows because they point to something else that the Holy Quran said. In the previous picture, Yahamakallah, isolated small pieces of clouds, cumulus clouds. B, when the small clouds join together, updrafts within the larger cloud increase, so the cloud is stacked up. Isn't that what the Quran said? Alhamdulillah. So here's step number 3, stacking. When the small clouds join together, updrafts within the larger cloud increase. The updrafts near the center of the cloud are stronger than those near the edges. These updrafts cause the cloud body to grow vertically, so the cloud is stacked up. This vertical growth causes the cloud body to stretch into cooler regions of the atmosphere where drops of water and hail formulate and begin to grow larger and larger. When these drops of water and hail become too heavy for the updrafts to support them, they begin to fall from the cloud as
rain, hail.
Rain and hail.
And snow.
What did the Quran say? Exactly that. Here's another picture that I found showing how the wind goes, the particles go, the water drops, they form ice crystals. When they get so heavy, then they come back down to earth. MashaAllah. The previous picture is a cumulonimbus cloud. After the cloud is stacked up, rain, hail comes out of it. And this came from a book entitled Weather and Climate. Meteorologists have only recently come to know these details of cloud formation, structure, and function by using advanced equipment like planes, satellites, computers, balloons, and other equipment to study wind and its direction, to measure humidity and its variations, and to determine the levels and variations of atmospheric pressure. In Surah Nur, the verse again, and he sends down hail. This is a continuation of that verse. And he sends down hail from mountains. Now mountains here are clouds. And didn't that look like a mountain, that previous picture? In the sky. So we know that there are no mountains in the sky. This refers to the clouds. And he strikes with it whomever he wills, and turns it from whomever he wills. The vivid flash of its lightning nearly blinds the sight. Meteorologists have determined that these cumulonimbus clouds that shower hail reach a height of 4.7 to 5.7 miles, like mountains, as the Quran said, and he sends down hail from mountains, clouds, in the sky. Why does this verse speak of lightning while referring to hail? Hail is a major factor in producing lightning. And if I've got some science teachers, I'd like you to build upon this, because I'm not a science teacher. Now, here's a...
Now, is it not lightning have more to do with creating the hail, or the hail?
The hail has to do, is a factor in producing lightning. I'm going to give you the proofs of that.
But
It's a factor in producing lightning. So it's
correct me if
I'm going to give you the proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah. Isn't that what I always do? All right, so hang tight. If I'm wrong, then my proofs will be wrong. Okay, so let's look. A cloud becomes electrified as hail falls through a region in the cloud of supercooled droplets and ice crystals. As liquid droplets collide with a hailstone, they freeze on contact and release latent heat. This keeps the surface of the hailstone warmer than that of the surrounding ice crystals. When the hailstone comes in contact with an icicle, an important, this is a continuation of this quote, phenomenon occurs. Electrons flow from the colder object toward the warmer object. So the hail becomes negatively charged. The same effect occurs when supercooled droplets come in contact with a piece of hail and tiny splinters of positively charged ice break off. These lighter, positively charged particles are then carried to the uppermost of the clouds by updrafts. The hail, left with a negative charge, falls toward the bottom of the cloud, so the lower part of the cloud becomes negatively charged. These negative charges are then discharged to the ground as what?
lightning.
Lightning. This information on lightning was only discovered recently. Until 1600, after the death of Christ, Aristotle's ideas on meteorology were dominant in the non-Muslim countries. For example, he said that the atmosphere contains two kinds of exhalation, moist and dry. I remember being taught this in school. That ages me. He also said that thunder is the sound of the collision of the dry exhalation with the neighboring clouds, and lightning is the inflaming and burning of the dry exhalation with the thin and faint fire. And here's a picture showing how the negative and the positive are working, and they come back to the negative and produce what?
Lightning.
Lightning.
So
I'm having a picture of that.
Thank you.
basically, clouds are like big batteries.
Clouds are like big batteries. Thank you, Jabril. Excellent explanation. I love it. If you young people could help me out here, because you've been learned this more recently than me. I learned it from the Quran and had to search for the scientific backup to show people how special our holy book is.
Let's go double look at it like that. The battery. It's perfect.
Perfect
And
explanation.
in the documentary that I saw recently, if they take a picture of the world in 24 hours, it looks like dancing, because they're constantly lightning being charged to Earth, because we need that for living. And if it stops, we don't have continuation of life. So it's constantly like that, the picture of 24 hours, always lightning everywhere.
I thought this picture was perfect to show how the lightning comes out of these clouds. Subhanallah. Now we're going to move to another miracle. We're going to move to another miracle found in the Quran. I love this excitement. I love the fact that there's chitter chatter, because the chitter chatter means that you are charged by what you're seeing. Am I right? I hope that's what the chitter chatter is.
Oh, yes. I'm charged.
Now the next miracle we're going to talk about is the fecundating winds. In Surah Al-Hijr, the Rocky Tracts, which is the 15th surah of the Holy Quran and the 22nd verse, and we send the fecundating winds, and you can look this up, this is the word in the translation, then cause water to descend from the sky, therewith providing you with water in abundance. This verse points out the first stage in forming rain is wind. We also saw this in the previous pictures, right?
Yes.
Until the beginning of the 20th century, the only relationship between the wind and the rain that was known was the wind drove the clouds. Yes, brother?
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're just scratching your head. All right.
Sorry.
Modern meteorological findings have demonstrated the fecunding role of the wind in the formation of rain. On the surface of oceans and seas, countless air bubbles form because of the water's foaming action. The moment these bubbles burst, thousands of tiny particles known as aerosols with a diameter of just 1/100th of a milliliter are thrown up into the air. These aerosols mixed with dust carried from the land by the wind are carried to the upper layers of the atmosphere. These particles carried to higher altitudes by winds come into contact with water vapor up there. Water vapor condenses around these particles and turns into water droplets. These water droplets first come together and form clouds, and then fall to the earth in the form of rain. As seen, winds fecundate the water vapor floating in the air with the particles that carry from the sea and eventually help the formation of rain clouds. And here's a picture of that. Yes, sorry, Deidre.
So, to sum it up, basically, winds down at our level will create an ocean spray, tiny particles, straight up to the atmosphere, which will push together and eventually form a cloud, which then comes back down to Earth.
Very good. Well said. He put it in a nutshell. Did anybody hear that? Say it. Jabril, speak up, brother.
Can you stand up and say
Spell
that?
it out for me, brother.
Okay. So,
It just makes for good TV.
It makes for good TV, brother.
at the ocean level, at our level, the wind will spray up the water. It'll go up, push together into the atmosphere, which will then get pushed together by more winds up there, you know, the air drafts. And then it will condense together, forming a cloud. Eventually it'll get too heavy and come back down to the ocean. And then do it again.
Now, way to go, Jabril. Let's give him a-
All right.
I think he's trying to take my job.
Science.
The previous picture shows the stages in the formation of waves. Waves are formed by the wind blowing above the surface of the water. With the wind, water particles start to move in a circular motion. This motion soon forms waves, one after the other, and bubbles formed by the waves spread in the air. This is the first stage in the formation of rain. This process is declared in the verse as we send the fecundating winds and then cause water to descend from the sky. Is it a miracle or not, folks? MashaAllah. The important point here is that this critical role of the wind in the formation of rain was stated centuries ago in a verse in the Quran at a time when people knew little about natural phenomena. Alhamdulillah. And now we're going to move into another miracle. Inshallah. Here's a picture of the fecundating winds. I think this is even a better picture, a more realistic picture. And you can actually see the vapors going up. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
MashaAllah. I'm trying not to cry.
Go for it, baby.
Go for it.
Swing your arm and cry. We'll join you. Go ahead.
So the proportion of rain in Surah 43 and verse 11. It is He who sends down water in due measure from the sky, by which we bring a dead land back to life. This is how you too will be raised from the dead. The measured quantity of rain has been discovered by modern research. It is estimated that in 1 second, approximately 16 million tons of water evaporates from the earth. This amount is 513 trillion tons of water in 1 year. This number is equal to the amount of rain that falls on the earth in 1 year. Yes, sir.
Can you go back one slide? That surah. Is it, so will it just rain on Judgment Day? Is that what it means?
No, it doesn't. No. I'll talk about what that means. I'll explain that. I'll give an explanation to that, inshallah. Okay. Water continuously circulates in a balanced cycle in a measured. Life on earth depends on this water cycle. People even reproduce this cycle artificially. Even a slight deviation in this equilibrium would very soon give rise to a major ecological imbalance that would bring about the end of life on earth. Scientists say rain keeps falling every year in exactly the same quantity and has been for millions of years. Subhanallah.
Same water.
And here's a picture of 16 million tons of water going up. And here it is, 16 tons per second, folks, coming down. 16 million tons. Get it right. Every year, the amount of water that evaporates and that falls back to the earth in the form of rain is constant. 513 trillion tons, folks. This constant amount is declared in the Quran by the expression sending down water in due measure from the sky. Year after year after year, and scientists say for millions of years, year after year, 513 trillion tons of water exactly. This constant amount is declared in the Quran by the expression sending down water in due measure from the sky. The constancy of this quantity is very important for the continuity of the ecological balance and therefore life. Now, here's talking about Ibrahim's question. Rains resurrect dead land. In Surah Furqan, the criterion of right and wrong, which is Surah 25, verses 48 to 49. We send it down from heaven, pure water, so that by it we can bring a dead land to life and give drink to many of the animals and people we created. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this. As well as bringing water, an essential requirement for living things to the earth, the rain also has a fertilizing property. This is another miracle. Drops of rain which evaporate from the sea and reach the clouds contain certain substances which revitalize dead soil. Yes, Jibreel.
I think if you go back one slide.
Yes, sure.
if you look at the story how it says, when we sat down the rain, they can bring a dead land to life. It's very interesting because I read an article about Mount St. Helens. If you remember,
Yes.
it erupted and the surrounding area was destroyed. Trees were dead and everything. But then the article said that after about a year or two, it would constantly rain in that area. And there were seeds from animals burying them in the dirt, down underneath the topsoil where all the ash was. Eventually the rain penetrated through the ash, washed it away, and got to the seeds below, which then brought trees back to life and revitalized the area.
Miracle.
It's a miracle. Total cyclical. All told about in the Holy Quran 1400 years ago.
And actually in the ashes, I think there is a component chemical called phosphate.
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
But mashallah, I love this. I love it because the fact that you know some of this stuff, when I talk about it, it reinforces it. So we're going to talk about those very chemicals. Alhamdulillah. Yes, brother.
So it's not really talking about day of judgment, it's talking about the dead soil and bringing it back to life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And also when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we, he's talking about him himself and the angels too.
Yeah, we is always referred to Allah. It's just the royal English language, which I feel is really was not necessary in the Holy Quran because of the divineness of the Holy Quran.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, can you repeat what you said?
When I said it's Allah subhanahu when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we, is he talking about himself and the angels or just himself?
Just himself. We is always referring to Allah. In a few occasions it'll say if it's the angels and Allah, but it's everything is la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Everything is by the power of Allah. The angels are just doing what Allah requests them to do. They never disobey. So if that helps you understand it. But most of the time we is the royal we and royal the Queen's English, but it's referring to Allah. It confuses a lot of people. So drops of rain which evaporate from the sea and reach the clouds contain certain substances, because Deborah was presenting my next slide for me, which revitalize dead soil. So are you ready for the next miracle? The raindrops with such revitalizing properties are called surface tension droplets. These form from the top layer of the surface of the sea, called the microlayer by biologists. In this surface layer, less than 1/10 of a milliliter thick, are found large quantities of organic waste formed from the decomposition of microscopic algae and zooplankton. Listen up, because this is what Deborah was talking about. Some of these wastes collect and absorb elements such as phosphorus, magnesium, and potassium, which are rarely found in seawater, as well as heavy metals such as copper, zinc, cobalt, and lead. Seeds and plants on the surface of the earth receive large quantities of the mineral salts and elements they need to grow from these raindrops. The Quran refers to this in these terms in Surah Qasaf or Surah Qaf, and we send down blessed water from the sky and made gardens grow by it and grain for harvesting. So Allah told us that this special water that man cannot recreate, by the way, is going to bring back the gardens. It's going to make our produce grow beautifully and nice for us. I'm sorry, yes, sir.
It's okay, and that is so true because I have a garden, and when I water it, it's just like my hose versus the rain. It's a complete difference on how my vegetables grow.
And I think it was a quote of Einstein that said the engineer of the universe wasn't doing it. It was really thinking through every little component, chemical component, and everything that he needed.
Speak up, Deborah, because I know the the way you speak to Lammy and Lila, sometimes you can speak louder than that.
Right on, brother, right on.
It always love. Always love. Always coming from love.
What did you say something about Einstein? Right?
Yeah, I think Einstein's quote, don't quote me on that, but I think it was Einstein's quote that he said, the engineer of the universe wasn't playing for kids. Every kid. So it was, thank you for.
Keeps. You got it.
And so everything was planned exactly how it's supposed to be. A chemical component that is so important for our life and to our bodies too was thought thoroughly, and this is the miracle that is.
Exactly. These salts, which descend with the rain. I'm sorry? Yes, I'm sorry, JJ.
In Islam, what is the definition of a miracle? Because I hear, every time you prove a point, which I love this, you're using scientific evidence to prove your point, but you're using the word miracle.
Great.
Now,
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Did you finish? I'm sorry,
No,
forgive me. I get excited and I jump.
In Christianity, the word miracle is when God, with common patriarchs between Islam and Christianity, like Moses, Abraham, or Jesus, it goes against scientific evidence, and that's the Christian's definition of a miracle. Example is Moses with the parting of the Red Sea went completely against what Allah put in place, but Allah used that and broke His own rules because He is God and lifted it in. You're using miracle. So is Islam? Is it a miracle? Is it a different way, or is it a different usage?
Let me explain that, because there's a teaching that is taught that is quite wrong, pretty much across the board Islamically, unfortunately. And what we will often hear people say is that miracles are reserved for the prophets. The word for miracle in Islam is mu'ajiza. Okay? Now, that's not true. Now, what they should be saying is that miracles come from Allah and prophets.
And Allah is God.
Because Allah is God.
Yeah.
Peace be upon you.
So, a miracle is something that does not come to us in the Islamic context on this earth. We have something called karamat or karama, which means this. I'm going to give this an example. Let's say that I'm trying to find a house, and I drive up in the driveway of this house, and there's a bird sitting on the house that only lives in South Africa. This could be a karamat, which is first cousin to miracle, is the way I like to describe it, telling me that maybe this is the house for me. So, for example, I was healed from cancer, and I was told I was going to die 10 years ago. They said there's nothing we can do for you. I had a stroke in November, and they said there's a less than 1% chance that you're going to recover. You see me standing up here. I'm not a fan. I'm not in your imagination. I'm for real. So that is a karamat. God restored my health, contrary to what medicine said could happen. So, did I answer your question?
No, not yet.
I see your point. Anything that comes from God is a miracle. Anything that comes from Allah is a miracle. It doesn't need to break any rules, or it doesn't need to be.
Exactly.
But I don't think the miracles in Islam come from going against science, because science is just proving Islam.
That's the miracle, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. The miracle is all this was 1,400 years ago. And now
Where people are just trying to discover it now.
I think I was a Christian too, and when I thought about miracle, it was something supernatural, something that would change life like in a split of second, or like it is in the Bible. But when we start just being a Muslim for only a few years only, and still learning from right there on the bottom, and the miracle is that every little blessings that you get per day, to me, is breathing waking up in the morning, being able to see and feel and learning those things. I think those are miracles too. I think the miracle of life itself.
One thing, for example, in about 3 weeks ago, I showed how the Quran supports the Big Bang Theory. Now, we did not need scientists to come along and show us this.
We already know.
We already knew it. And we believe it out of faith. But the fact is that the subject matter of this class is the miraculous Quran. So, for example, in the Quran it says that God would preserve this book. It is the only holy book. Now, as Muslims, we recognize the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran as divine revelation. We know that the Torah and the Injil have been changed. The Bible, sorry, the Torah and the Bible have been changed by man. The Holy Quran has never been changed. And so, part of the miracle of the Quran too was that it was revealed by the angel Jibril to an unlettered man, a man that could not read. Muhammad, yes. Peace and blessings.
Peace be upon him.
So, does that help you a little bit more?
Yes.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Yes, sister.
Yes, I was just going to say, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent every prophet and the miracles were with that prophet. Like if we say Moses alayhi salam, he has the stake, he split the sea, and there is a proof up to now that what is the separation of the sea. Pharaohs, he's dead at that time, and in the Quran said we're going to preserve his body until now. And it's proof that the Pharaoh's body is still up to now. That's miracle. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put those pyramids and all that to prove to us, even the centuries are passing, still that Pharaoh was there and Nile is there. There is a miracle at that time. Except the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad, his miracle lasts, which is the Quran. It's one of the miracles that didn't finish with the period of the Prophet himself.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. Did I do this last bullet point?
No.
Did I talk about the salts?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, sister. I'm sorry.
She's making. No. What I was going to say, that was a very good question from them. With a lot of, me coming from being a Christian, I think because we're taught that these things happen, don't question it, it just happened. And then when the comment was fulfilled, and it has these answers in it, other than how the Bible describes things, it has answers to those things. So, I mean, that's the miracle in itself, because it's the answering to all these miraculous things that happen. That you question when you're a Christian, and then when you accept Islam, like all the answers come to those questions.
Thank you, sister. And by the way, JJ, I was a Methodist minister about 30 years ago, and became Muslim. So I understand that question, and it is a great question that you're asking.
Well, one of the miracles in the Quran was about conception, about how the baby is formed and how it appears as like a chewed thing of meat. This was not something that they could have known at that time. So the science is there to back it. It's showing that this unlettered man who received this information could not have known all of these things, and a lot of it's just been revealed in the last 100 years of our time. So that's the miracle.
As a matter of fact, we're going to keep going on this today, inshallah, but the pairs in creation is a miracle that I'd like to cover. The relativity of time is also a miracle in the Quran that I haven't covered. The region of what that controls our movement in the brain is also mentioned in the Holy Quran that was only discovered recently. The birth of humans. I covered the 3 veils in the Quran already, but I haven't covered the actual birth that Sister Ossie is talking about. The word hammam, which Sister Nasreen shared with us, I wanted to actually give you the proofs for it before I finish this class. And there's just loads of stuff. It's just amazing. It really is. MashaAllah. So, yes, Sister Nasreen.
I was shocked to find another fact about clouds. When Allah says that if I want to punish you, I can let the clouds fall upon you and the cloud will crush you. So then I watched the program about this, and they said that before the rain, like before pulling down the rain, the water in the clouds, and millions and tons of water in the cloud is really, really heavy. If it fell on it and crushed the land.
Well, just to reiterate, what you're saying, Sister, yes?
Also, the fact that there's a crack in the Qamar, when Shafat Qamar, was written in the Quran, and that science saw how come the moon has that crack.
So much later. So much later.
Just to touch on this, in some places in the country, occasionally we will have hail the size of golf balls. Has anybody ever seen that before?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got hit by
And it
one of
actually
them.
will damage your car. It's so heavy. Now, can you imagine if all of that hail came down as one piece? It would destroy people. Another
Like a frozen meteorite.
What's that now?
A frozen meteor.
A frozen meteor. The law.
The thing is that Allah Rahmat, rain and thunder and storm could be Allah Rahmat, and rain and storm could be azab from Allah. So He can destroy us or He can flourish us. Rahmat means He flourishes us, and azab means destroy us.
Yeah.
It is in Allah's way.
Absolutely.
It is very clearly written in Quran, every step you read.
Very good. So here we go, back to what Deborah was saying. Heavy metals of the kind found in aerosols create elements which increase productivity during growth and production of plants. Rain is an important fertilizer. With the fertilizer which provided by rain alone, within 100 years, a soil of poor quality can obtain all the elements necessary for plants. Doesn't that sound like sort of what we were talking about St. Helens? It didn't even take 100 years. Forests also grow and are nourished with help from these chemicals which originate from the sea. In this way, every year some 150 million tons of particles of fertilizer fall to earth. Were it not for this fertilizing function, there would have been far fewer plants on the earth and the balance of life would have been disturbed. The information about the revitalization of plants in the verse is just one of the countless miraculous properties of the Quran. This is a quote that came from the website that I just put up there. In Surah Hadid, and this is another miracle, by the way, we're going into. Surah Hadid means iron, and in the South we say iron. So I'm trying to make sure you guys know what I'm saying, because sometimes the South African slips in and sometimes the Southern slips in. So I have to speak about 3 languages up here. And we sit down iron, in which there lies great force, and which has many uses for mankind. Now, I didn't put this in the slides because I couldn't articulate it, but I'm going to throw this out to you. Isn't it interesting that we had a period of greatness called the Iron Age? I'll just throw that out as a teaser. Iron is one of the elements highlighted in the Holy Quran. In Surah Al-Isra, also called Bani Israel, the journey by night, Surah 17, verses 49 to 51, they say, what? When we are bones and crumpled dust, will we then be raised up as a new creation? Say, it would not matter if you were rock or iron, or indeed any created thing that you think is harder still. They will say, who will bring us back again? Say, he who brought you into being in the first place.
Yes.
The previous, yes, go ahead, Gabriel.
I think one of the reasons we had an iron age is iron is used in alloys, which we discovered back in those ages. Alloys are a mix of two or more metals that can mix together to become stronger. And iron is used in a lot of different alloys, such as steel and things like that. And that's one of the main reasons we use it so much.
I love it.
Yeah.
And we got a slide about this coming up. So Jabril, I didn't pay Jabril to do this, by the way.
And another thing, when he says we send down iron,
Yes.
it's an element that we don't have here on Earth. It is a superficial that was sent through meteors and stuff. That in another slide of yours.
How many like keep going? Keep going. I love being reinforced as a teacher. So ask Sharon what it means when you're teaching a class and somebody reinforces what you're saying. It's really nice because it makes your job easier.
And it's funny, I studied science 5 years ago, and it's totally different from what I studied, but it's still I have to keep catching up, and those things are just new. Recent.
I want to add something to, sorry, Sister.
That's all right.
I wanted to add something to what I was saying to JJ. Let's see if I can remember what I was going to say.
Something about miracles.
It'll come back to me. It will come back to me, inshallah. The previous verses are a reference to people's dead bodies petrifying and turning into iron. Living tissue is not preserved over millions of years. It is only possible to see things that lived a long time in the past once they have been fossilized. After death, living things can be preserved for years by fossilization, by their bodies turning into stone under the ground. A fossil refers to the preservation of a living thing by petrification, by its turning into stone. Iron is preserved undamaged in the body as it fossilizes. Human beings need to consume an average of 10 to 15 milligrams a day in order to be healthy. Excess iron consumed is stored in the liver. In addition, the protein transferring in blood plasma also carries a certain amount of iron. And here's the proof of that from a scientific perspective. The reference in the above verse to the presence of iron in the remains of the human body is exceedingly wise from that point of view. The reference in the above verse to the presence of iron in the remains of the human body, I repeated myself. Very good.
Making sure.
Just making sure. Now, this, I think somebody touched on this a minute ago. Research has also shown the presence of pyrite, a compound of iron and sulfur, in fossils. The iron mineral, pyrite, forms very easily during the degradation of organic substances. It is therefore generally found in fossil shells and is capable of damaging the fossils since it can react with oxygen and water. The words crumbled dust in the verse may be a reference to pyrite degradation, which leads to the fragmentation and collapse of a fossil as pyrite reacts with water and oxygen. I put the reference to this and I put in parentheses Allah knows best. Because if I'm not 100% sure of something, I'm not going to tell you that. But I can tease you with it and make you think about it. Right? So Allah knows best. I believe, I deem by Allah, that if we live on this earth long enough, more of this stuff will come to service in science. So I really believe that we're going to continue to find more and more and more about the miraculous Quran. The longer we live, things are being discovered every day. Another fact, confirmed by recent finding, is that matter constantly seeks the most stable state. Therefore, given sufficient time, all matter matter will eventually turn into iron. Iron is the most stable state of nuclear matter, and cosmological models predict the stage in which everything will turn into iron as a result of nuclear fusion and nuclear fission reactions. And this is the source that I got that from. Okay? Just to back up where we're talking.
Is this in Quran?
Yes.
Which surah?
It came from, let me go back, sister, sorry. Beni Israel.
Bani Israel. Yeah, I'm reading nowadays. I read Bani Israel. But it was not in so much detail.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see. Good. In his book, In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, Quantum Physics and Reality, the astrophysicist John Dribbon describes how iron is the most desirable state of matter and how all matter in the universe wants to turn into iron. The revelation in the Quran that human beings petrify and fossilize and turn into iron is a fact that has now been scientifically confirmed. In the same way that no archaeological, paleontological, geological, or astronomical research was possible at the time the Quran was revealed, neither was it possible to identify the elements using an electron microscope. From that point of view, the facts revealed in the above verse once more confirm that the Quran is a divine text. And I think, should I cover one more?
Yes.
You're up for it, guys?
Yes.
Really. Okay. The prohibition of blood in the Quran. Now, before I even read this verse, I want to tell you that in the Injil, it says the life of the flesh is in the blood. In the Bible. Okay? And if you talk to Christian theologians, and you ask them, and I've got a preacher's daughter here, I'll be interested to see if she can reinforce this. They ask, why did people used to live longer? 950 years, Noah, alayhi. And what I was taught in Bible college is that the more people sin, the more the bloodline is contaminated, and therefore we don't live as long. Okay? So that's what that means. So I just think that's an interesting phenomenon that is shared sort of in Christianity by theologians. That we know that the more people sin, the more diseases take place. And if we just look since 1970, we are actually discovering, folks, new STDs. Now, I was just reading an article about 3 new STDs that they haven't even gotten all the information about yet. So we do know that through sin, our blood is contaminated. Yes, brother. Did you have you raised your hand?
You were saying something about how people used to live longer in the past?
Yes.
But what I was taught was that lifespans back then used to be very short, around 30, 40 years.
See, yeah, I heard the same thing.
And now our lifespans could be anywhere up to 155 years.
Well, Noah, for example, alayhi lived 950 years. So if you go back and you study the history of some of our prophets, they lived much longer lives. There might be an argument about that, Allahu Alam. What I've been taught is that at the time of Adam alayhi salam, people lived many, many years. And if you look at even the genealogies of the Bible, you will see how long people lived, because some of it is so-and-so beget so-and-so, and so-and-so beget so-and-so, and so-and-so beget, and it just goes beget, and they're like pages of the begets. If you read the Bible, Dr. Hawk.
Maybe their math was wrong.
Maybe their math was wrong. Oh, yes, brother. Yes, Jay.
I went to a school under the Southern Baptist Convention, and so it was in 2005, they changed their stance on, after the flood, there's a verse in the Old Testament, in the Torah, where it says the sky fell, and that was a global flood, and they said that before the flood there was not an ozone layer, but a layer of water and a layer of liquid, and that came down, and with that release and that change of the environment, the cells deteriorate at a faster pace, and that's what, me going to a Protestant school, that's what I was taught, and that's what we were indoctrinated into thinking. And I graduated, that was 2 years ago. I don't know if they've changed their stance, but that's what the Southern Baptist Convention.
I also heard that at Valencia from one of the professors there.
They teach out of the college?
Yes, they taught that, and he
Take religious studies.
stated that he did not like to use textbook because he would have to correct it constantly. But he also,
That's the biggest thing. This is such a pleasant surprise because I grew up in a home that was, we were one White Hood away from a Klan rally, and so when I went to college, I decided that
You say a Klan rally?
It was a very, very uptight, religiously.
No, I'm from Tennessee. I know how that
spiritually
works.
Construing household, and when I went to college, I said this isn't right, and I wanted to learn more about everything. And when coming in here and growing up 18 years, I was expecting something a lot different, but I was expecting, like the evil Christians, we're gonna scheme against them.
Oh no.
That's what my parents taught me. That's like my parents taught me. If you ask them what Islam is, it's guttural.
Islam is peace.
It's a guttural religion. It's for animal. And coming here and you're talking about science, and you're expanding your minds not only spiritually but intellectually, and it's such a big surprise, and it's such a big weight off my shoulders to prove my folks wrong.
JJ, let me tell you this, that on March the 27th, I was delivering a speech in Longwood entitled Jesus and Islam. And we love Jesus. You can't be a Muslim without loving Jesus. We believe that Jesus is coming back. We actually believe that he's going to be buried next to Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And we have a lot of authentic hadiths about the future and Jesus' return and all of that. But we actually regard Christians and Jews as people of the book, contrary to what CNN says.
It's Fox News.
He's right. That's so true.
In high school, I was the one that was nice to everybody because we had two kids that were Catholic, and so they were teased mercilessly, and that's what really started me saying that this isn't the right path for me. And I took a non-Western religions class, so I do, in my opinion, I do know a lot about Islam, and I have nothing but respect for the movement, and that's why I'm here to, I wanted to buy a Quran, I wanted to know more about it. But I'm not trying to throw sunshine at you, but the discipline and the regiment that you guys do out of the passion that you have, no other religion can imitate it,
We've been doing it since the beginning.
It's amazing.
Yeah, Dr. Hoff.
One thing, as you said, that because of sin, age getting lesser, but it occurred to me suddenly, Azur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taken with early age, like 62.
Yes.
So age is not decreasing because of sin.
Well, let me remind you that what I said is that is what I was taught in Bible college. That's not what I'm saying or that I'm promoting that I believe. But when I was in Lee Bible College, that's what I was taught. So remember the context of what I said, okay? Yes, you do.
I just wanted to say, that Noah's time was thousands of years ago. And how cultures, they evolve and things change. Perhaps they had a different measurement of time than we had. And perhaps in the translations, maybe it didn't translate over at some point, and eventually it got switched over to here. So perhaps there was some sort of, lost in translation, because that tends to happen.
And I can certainly accept that. The challenge I have, though, is that as a student of the Bible, how many years is a generation?
Oh, no, generation.
15,000
I've always told you, if I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know.
Allah knows.
But what I will say is that according to what I've been taught Islamically, which has been authenticated by many, many people, the prophets were living much longer than we live now.
Man.
Now, we notice now, but I do want to do this last one because I promised you I would, but what we are noticing now is that even though we are living longer, what about the quality of life?
Bad.
It's not good.
Very, very unclean.
It's people, you know, really a lot of people are not dying in dignity. It's a very sort of sad state of affairs. But let's go on to this next miracle, inshallah. Prohibition of blood in the Quran. In Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 and verse 173, he is only forbidding you carry on blood, and that's not carry on luggage, by the way. Alright. And pork, and what has been consecrated to other than Allah. But anyone who is forced to eat it without desiring it or getting to excess in it commits no crime. Allah is ever forgiving, most merciful. Now the wisdom behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's prohibition of blood emerged during the 20th century. And I really want to go into this. I think it's amazing. How many people here know about blood sausage? All right. One of the grossest things I ever saw in my life, to my knowledge, did not know about blood sausage until I went to South Africa. But apparently it's a southern thing, right?
Yeah, they make it.
What is it?
I'm sorry.
Blood sausage?
But keep that in mind and let me paint a graphic picture for you. Everybody listen up, please.
What is it?
Blood sausage is if you make sausage and you literally take the blood from the animal, put it in a stainless steel pan that would look really pretty in a meat market's case, and then drop the sausage in that blood. That's called blood sausage. It's literal blood, folks. It's not a joke. Yes, sister. Please listen up, everybody.
I grew up in a German family. It's called Blutwurst, and how they make it is they take the casing and they put onions and bits of fat,
Yeah.
and then they pour the raw blood into the casing, tie it off.
And when you cook the blood, it thickens up, so you can actually slice it.
Yeah, it feels like it.
The blood coagulates.
Not that I eat it. Just saying.
All
I just
right.
happen to know what it is.
By carrying vitamins, hormones, oxygen, and substances such as protein, sugar, and fat absorbed during digestion to the cells, blood makes it possible for life to survive. On the other hand, it also carries various toxins and waste products that need to be expelled from the body. One of the most important tasks performed by blood is to transport substances such as urea, which by the way is what causes my gout, uric acid, carotene, and carbon dioxide that needs to be removed from the body. Therefore, in the event that significant quantities of blood are consumed, the level of products in the body that should be expelled will rise considerably. That will increase the levels of urea, harmful substances transported to the kidneys for expulsion from the body. This can impair brain functions and even result in coma. This is why, because of its very nature, there will always be harmful compounds in blood, even if taken from healthy animals. If it is taken from a sick animal, various parasites and germs will also be transmitted in it. In that event, the germs might multiply and spread throughout the body, and that is the real danger. If someone consumes blood, all the germs and waste products in it may spread through the body and lead to such diseases as kidney insufficiency or liver coma. In addition, most of the microbes carried in the blood may cause other diseases by damaging the lining of the stomach and the intestines. Blood is not a sterile environment. To put it in another way, it is ideal for germs to grow in, and here's the source that I got this from. And what I'd like you to notice is that One of the sources was in 1997. So this quote came straight from a medical journal. Since microbes have excellent opportunities to feed in blood, it represents an ideal environment for them. When in equilibrium with the functions of the other fluids in the body and the immune system, blood does not support microorganisms and therefore disease. In a healthy individual, these microorganisms live by making use of one another inside the body. When that environment is seriously impaired, when the internal equilibrium is damaged, in other words, they may turn into microorganisms that cause disease when they find the appropriate surroundings. Yes, Jabril?
It's kind of similar to how in our stomach we have specialized bacteria that helps us inside of our stomach.
Right.
But if you research cases, some people, their stomach may burst, or they may have a problem, and the bacteria leaks into the other parts of the body. It's not meant to be there, therefore it can cause sepsis and many various problems because it's designed to be in the stomach and nowhere else.
As a matter of fact, that toxicity is so deadly. We actually almost lost, in the last year, one of our congregants because of that very thing. And it is such a battle for medical staff to clean that up once it leaks inside of you. Yes, sister?
Like if you vomit, the acid in your stomach comes up in your throat, in your mouth, and your teeth will decay if you vomit too much, if you vomit sparingly, and you're louder. When you vomit, the acid from your stomach comes up and will damage your throat, your teeth, and your mouth. Like your teeth will decay, and you'll start getting vocal problems and stuff like that. And it's just really nasty.
As a matter of fact, we know from the studies of anorexia, bulimia, that when people throw up, force themselves to throw up, often their teeth begin to break because of the acid from the stomach. Yes, brother?
To touch on what she said, when it comes up into your esophagus, you have a sphincter muscle that actually closes. It actually starts to weaken that, so it's actually harder to swallow food as you get older.
It can actually weaken to the point, when I was working at UCF as a counselor, at the counseling center there, I had a client, and this actually resulted in her kidneys shutting down. That's how bad it is. It was a very, very serious situation. We managed to get her just in time, alhamdulillah, and she had to be hospitalized the very day that she came to see me. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you know I have to chime in on this one. Eating disorders have the highest mortality of any mental illness. A lot of people assume like depression with suicide. No, it's actually eating disorders. They will kill you quicker and sooner than any other mental illness that we know of.
Thank you for sharing that. When the blood pH level, acid and alkali balance is imbalanced because of poor nutrition or harmful chemicals, harmless microbes can change into ones that can cause disease. If the body is to be healthy, the pH level of the blood should be around 7.3. Even small variations in that level may cause that balance to be impaired and cause microorganisms to become more harmful in order to adapt to their surroundings. Blood being sterile may be compared to milk going off when left outside. Microbes already present in the blood exhibit harmful effects by adapting to their new environment. And this is the resource that I got this quote from.
But I also heard that even the slightest change in the pH level of blood, I think almost immediately die, right?
Yeah, the toxicity can actually cause death.
Yeah, I know, but I thought it was immediate.
Well, it's, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the context of what you're saying, but it's not always immediate because the pH has to, it can be, but it's not always, because I've seen personal examples of it that weren't immediate death. So. Let me just finish this one, inshallah. In addition to all this, blood is not suitable for use as a food product. the level of digestible proteins such as albumin, globulin, and fibrinogen is low. Just 8 grams in 100 milliliters of blood. The same applies to fats. In addition, blood contains a high level of hemoglobin, a complex protein that is very difficult to digest and is unacceptable to the stomach. When blood clots, the protein fibrinogen gives rise to a plate containing erythrocytes, which are red blood corpuscles, by turning into fibrin. Fibrin is one of the hardest proteins to digest, thus making blood even more difficult to digest. In conclusion, health experts agree that blood is unfit for human consumption in any form. After saying, unlawful for you are carry on, blood and pork, and what has been consecrated to other than a law, and animals which have been strangled, and animals which have been killed by a blow, and animals which have fallen to their death, and animals which have been gored, and animals which wild beasts have eaten, except those you are able to slaughter properly, and animals which have been sacrificed on altars, and deciding things by means of divining errors, that is, deviance. Almighty Allah goes on to say, but if anyone is forced by hunger, not intending any wrongdoing, Allah is ever forgiving, most merciful. Meaning that if you're in the desert and you cannot find anything else to eat except pork, is it haram? No. No, it's not. Because the value of life is so important that we want to survive that. Sister Deborah.
What is carry-on and
Carry-on is dead animals.
It's gorged. It means beaten. Animals that have been beaten.
Okay, and carry-on is?
Carry-on
like roadkill.
Is like roadkill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, brother.
So basically, we're only allowed to eat animals that are basically vegetarians. Or that I thought that we weren't allowed to eat animals that eat like predators, you know, like tigers not allowed to eat, a lion, shark not allowed to eat, right?
And what now? I'm sorry.
We're not, like, for example, we're not really allowed to eat sharks or alligators or lions, you know. Yes, yes.
Right. Those things are considered makruh to eat. Like, for example, some Muslims don't eat. I don't want to get into that because it's a different lecture. I want to try to wrap this up, but we are allowed to eat cows. We're allowed to eat goats. Those are not vegetarians, right?
Yeah,
they are. Okay, I'm sorry. Forgive me. That's right. They eat grass.
All sea animals. We eat
all sea animals we are allowed to eat. Okay, alhamdulillah. Let me just wrap this up, inshallah. I know this is a little longer, but that came from Surah Al-Ma'idah. Did you have a question, brother? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right. People of the time were unaware of the wisdom behind it, but were protected by abiding by Allah's prohibition. Those who believe and trust in Allah and comply with His commandments and prohibitions will enjoy auspicious lives in terms of the hereafter and also live under Allah's protection and infinite mercy. So let me ask you something. How important do you think this was 1,400 years ago versus the knowledge of it even now?
No prohibition of food,
Amazing, right? Next week, inshallah, with the help of Allah, we're going to talk about radio receivers on mountains. That's where we'll begin. And this is talked about in the Holy Quran, just a little teaser. And we'll go into some other miracles, inshallah, in the Holy Quran. Like I said, I told you guys that I thought we'd be finished with the miracles next week. I don't think we will be. I hope that's not a disappointment to you. Is it? No. Okay, good. But as soon as I get through them, then we will start doing the tafsir, inshallah. I love you all for the sake of Allah. If the fathers could stay, is the prayer at 1:30 or 1:45?
Brother, is it a men's group or is it only for people that have children?
This is only for, if you are a man and you want to come.
That wraps up Sunday's class for your mom's sakes, and
Because you probably will
we're on
have
standby.
them one day. So,